astrology, manifestation, crystals, tarot. You know what all of that actually means? It means a generation that is looking for Jesus without knowing it. We have a lot of people today who say things like, I am spiritual, but not religious. And I strongly believe that this generation did not find spirituality, especially Gen Z. I believe that spirituality found them and that it is leading them somewhere that they do not expect. And it just didn't appear like that. I believe it was built upon belief. And when they were brought to their end with one belief, it birthed another one. The first one is the age of atheism, where you have people who tell you that there is no God whatsoever. The loudest intellectual voice in the late 20th century and the early 21st century were atheists. You have people like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, the so-called New Atheism. They had only one message, that God is a delusion. You have literally Richard Dawkins who wrote a book called The God Delusion, like believing God is some sort of delusion. They had only one message, that the religion is dangerous, science has replaced faith, and that believing in anything supernatural is an intellectual weakness. This was literally an era where they rejected God completely. They were not confused. They were convinced that God was not there or God does not exist. There was no conversation. God is not there. And if you believe in God, you are just in some sort of a delusion. But what I strongly believe is that this position, especially atheism, is an exhausting position. Because when you look at the complexity of the universe, you look at the longing of the human heart, you look at the reality of consciousness, love, meaning, morality, and you come to the conclusion that none of these things point to anything really. Consciousness, it points to nothing. Love, meaning, it points to nothing. You have to, it takes a lot of effort. And you have to find what you feel or the longing of your heart every single day. And I strongly believe that holding that position, for anyone who holds that position, sooner or later it will bring them to their end. And I believe many people were brought to their end. The scripture says in Psalm chapter 14, verse 1, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. So they were so convinced. But I strongly believe that eventually a generation just got tired of fighting. They were tired of fighting that there's no God, because you can't explain. This universe is so complex. You have fine-tuning. You have love. How can you explain this feeling of love? How can you explain the reality of meaning? Does life have a purpose? All these questions. And you cannot come to the conclusion that there is no God. There is literally nothing, and will just happen randomly by some sort of a big bang. And I believe that a generation got tired, and it birthed another belief. I'm not saying that those beliefs were not existing, simultaneously, but I believe the progression and how it's trending and gaining in numbers were just being birthed one after the other. And once the age of atheism was rejected, I believe now what was birthed was the age of agnosticism, where the conversation shifted. People who at first used to say there was literally no God, now they changed. They said, we can't prove it. We can't say God doesn't exist. We also can't say God exists. We're just going to settle for living in uncertainty. We will shift from there is no God to we can't know. And at first, this sounds very humble, I'm not saying God exists. I'm not also saying that God doesn't exist. What I'm just saying is that we can't know. But my question is this: if we truly cannot know anything ultimate, then nothing is truly meaningful. Because anything you will bring to me, I'll just say, there's no way we can find this. And what I believe is that this leads people to live a life that is directionless, with no solid ground beneath them. And at the end of the day, you will find yourself with that emptiness again. Because now you are wrestling with meaning. If I can't know, Does my life have finally a meaning? No, it doesn't. And you can't just give it a meaning the way you want it. And that meaning will end when you die? No, you want something because you believe that there is something that is beyond you. There is something that will even outlive you. And I believe that we all believe in some sort of way that there is something that will not only outlive us, but will follow us even after our death. And when people came to the end of this belief, that's where I believe this age of spirituality came from. People are no longer saying, we can't know. What they are saying is that we strongly believe that there is something out there. And I think we need to pay close attention, especially to this generation that is now given to so much spirituality. We need to pay close attention. They used to say nothing exists beyond the natural, but now they're saying something is definitely out there. You see this with people talking about manifestation, crystals, tarot, astrology, that there is something beyond the natural, beyond the material world that we see. You see the explosion in interest in angels, demons, spirit, the spiritual realm. What I believe that this tells us is that a generation that was not handed something sacred went to look for the sacred anyway. Because this generation, especially Gen Z, especially the ones that are coming, they are growing up in a very secular world, digital world. And nobody is there. You're growing up with parents who are not talking to you about God or anything. But even if this world tried to hide this reality, the reality in your heart that God exists will always knock at some point in time. They couldn't kill the hunger, so they started feeding it with whatever they could find. Now you see people, they don't even know how to describe the universe, and they're actually taking the universe for God because they can't say it's God. They just say there's something out there. If you believe strongly enough, the universe will give it to you. I actually have a video where I talk about certain things that Christians should stop saying, and the universe is one of them, and I explain why. And sometimes people think that people giving themselves to this much spirituality is some sort of a bad thing for our generation, but I don't think so. I think that this is not the enemy winning. I think that people are being brought to the end of themselves, whether they know it or not. And this is actually God's hunger in them expressing itself, but just in a misdirected ways. The thirst is real. The hunger is real. But the thing is that the well they are drinking from is not the right one. It's not the right one. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. And this, I think, is God knocking in the heart of people saying, hey, it's me all this time. And that's what I say, that the destination that this generation is not seeing is that hunger, that thirst is leading them to one person, Jesus. And here's where I believe that every spiritual practice, every late night conversation about the universe, what it's saying is that I am empty and I believe something out there can fill me. They just don't know that the thing out there that can fill them is a person, and that person is Jesus. It's not church attendance. It's not a religion. It's the person of Jesus. And this is exactly what Augustine said, and I loved it when I read it. He said, our heart is restless until it finds its rest in you. He was describing every human being that ever lived. That restlessness is not a flaw. I believe it is a compass. And every compass points somewhere specific. And that restlessness, that emptiness is pointing toward one person, and that person is Jesus. It's just like the episode in Acts chapter 17, when Paul goes to the Athenians and he sees an altar that they had built to what they call the unknown God. And Paul comes to them and he says to them, what you worship as unknown is what I'm proclaiming to you. And this generation is now calling God the universe. He will give it to you. And I want to tell you that universe that you're talking about is one person, and his name is Jesus. It's not a religion. It's not about church attendance first. It's not about a set of moral rules, but it's about one person and the work that he has done at the cross. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. He is the life that you're looking for. He is the way that you're looking for. He is the truth that you've been looking for. And in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 13, he said, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. With all your heart. And if you are exploring spirituality right now, and you're trying to find something that is real, something that can actually feel you, you are not crazy. And I would go as far as to say even that you are not far from God. You are actually closer than you think. You just have to make that step and accept Jesus and say to Jesus, Jesus, I'm open. I know that you are the only one who can fill me, who can feel the emptiness that I've been feeling. There is a God-shaped hole inside of every human being. And that hole, that emptiness, it's only Jesus who can fill it. You are not looking for a religion. You are looking for a person, and that person is Jesus. That person is Jesus. And when you find Jesus, you submit to him. You surrender to him. You're not finding Jesus so that he can give you things that will only please your flesh. No. You are finding Jesus because you know that yourself, you cannot feel yourself. So you submit completely to him for him to feel you. So if you are looking for something, you are looking for Jesus. And if you're watching this video, you have already found Jesus, you know one of your friends who are looking for Jesus, send them this video. Thank you so much for listening or watching. I'm going to see you again next time for another episode. God bless you, and bye-bye.